Alrighty, this is Jason here to make another how-to video for my YouTube channel, Razor's Edge. Today I'm going to be installing the rear lower high clearance A-arms. These come from ORB Fabrication. It's a match set for the ones I put on the front in a previous video. As you can probably tell, I've already installed the driver's side arm because of the additional clearance under the arm versus the factory one. Unfortunately, I do not have my not so lovely assistants with me today, so I'm going to be doing this solo, which means I'm in my shop talking to myself, which is a little weird, but that's just how these things are done. So alright, anyway, let's get this started. Alright, so quickly here before I get started, I've had a few people ask me how I make these videos. What I've got is the GoPro head strap that, well, it's just as it sounds, it straps the GoPro right to your head. And then I've got their app on my cell phone here that allows me to see what the camera sees so that I can make sure it's aimed properly. But you can stop and start the video with this. You can change all the settings. You can wipe the card. You can automatically set date and time. It's pretty handy, but anyway, this is how I'm doing it. Alright, so anyway, I've already got the machine blocked up. I've got the tire off, so we're kind of ready to get started. Obviously, removing the wheel would be step one after you get it supported properly. Step two is going to be to remove this bolt here that attaches the bottom of this bearing carrier, or what I call the hub, to the end of the A-arm here. Now, one thing to note, now I'm not sure if this is specific to the year of the machine or the model of the machine, but apparently on some razors this bolt is what they call an M10. That refers to the size, and that'll put it the same size as the bolt that holds the shock on, as well as both pivots on the upper end of the A-arm. On this one, that bolt is an M12. It's an 18mm socket that fits it, and the ORB arms, the hole in the A-arm here was sized for the M10 bolt, so I actually had to drill it out. I don't know if that's something I should have told them when I placed the order, but that is something to be aware of. Check that before you order these to let them know what size bolt. Basically, if you got a 15mm socket that fits this and you have the M10, if it takes an 18mm, then it's an M12, and you'll need a bigger hole here. Now, you can drill it out yourself, which is no big deal, which is what I did, but having it come from them already, you know, the proper size hole would obviously be beneficial. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and take that bolt out. I've got an 18mm socket here and box end wrench. I've already loosened this, but just to let you know, I had to use a pull handle to get this bolt loose because it's extremely tight. Just kind of letting you know that, what you'll need to break this bolt loose. But since I've already gotten it, I'm just going to go ahead and use my air ratchet and zip it the rest of the way off. Now, there's a washer on that bolt, so as you begin to push it out, make sure you catch it so you don't lose it. On this end there is not, because this is a flanged head bolt. So you may have to support the hub a little bit and wiggle it to get it out, but generally it comes out pretty easy. Alright, so the next thing you want to do, now you can just let this thing hang here if you really want to, but I kind of like to get it up out of the way. I got a piece of rope here that I tied a loop in. I just hook it over the hub and then just tie it off up here somewhere, like on the roll bar. Just kind of get it up out of the way good. Just use a few half-hitch knots here to hold it in place. Don't take a whole lot. Alright, so we got this thing kind of up and out of the way. The next step is to remove the bolt out of the shock here. This is an M10, they call it. Basically, you need a 15mm box end and socket with a ratchet. I've already loosened this one up. I'm just demonstrating what you'll need to get it off. You can ratchet this thing all the way off if you want to, but I prefer to just take the air ratchet and just zip it the rest of the way off. And with the hub and everything already loose, or the bearing carrier, there's not really any weight on this, so it shouldn't take much at all to get this bolt just to slide right on out. Just kind of wiggle the A-arm around until it comes loose, and there you go. And just like on the hub here, I got a little knotted rope I'm going to use to pull the shock up and get it out of the way. Alright, so the final step in getting this arm off is to remove the bolts out of the two pivots on the frame. 15mm also fits those. Get them loosened up, and then I'll use my air ratchet again to get these off. Sorry about the air compressor. This bolt's got a washer on it, and you want to make sure you catch it. And just kind of wiggle the arm, pull this bolt out. And this bolt actually has two washers because it does not have a flanged head. I don't know why, it's just what they used. Same thing, just kind of wiggle the bolt out, catch your washer. Make sure you got your washer on the other side here, pull it off with the bolt. Hold the arm up, wiggle it around, just slide the bolt out, and off it comes. Alright, I should have mentioned this probably a little bit before I got to this point. I didn't think about it because I don't have this part on my machine, but right about the time you take the shock loose, you should take the sway bar link loose as well, and it attaches right here. It's the same size bolt that holds the shock on. I don't have a sway bar on this machine. I took it off because it's strictly a trail machine, and I usually only carry a couple kids around in the back, so being a four-seater, the springs are stiff enough to control the body roll without the sway bar, and allows it to have full use of its independent suspension. But your sway bar connects back here, and it comes around and loops over the axle, and it attaches to a short link right here. And you can just, when you take the shock off, just take that bolt out as well. Alright, so that's the factory arm removed. And what we have to do is transfer the bushings, these sleeves that are inside the bushings, and the grease fittings over to the new arm. Alright, so here's the ORB Fabrication arm. Here's the drill bit I used to drill these holes out so that the M12 bolt would fit in it. Just kind of set it out of the way for a second. And go ahead and remove the grease fittings from the factory arms. This is a little 3/8 inch open end wrench. Then we need to remove the bushings. You can just pull these pins out of the center. If it won't come, just try to poke something down in there that's not going to scratch it. You definitely don't want to get on this pin with a pair of pliers, because if you put any nicks in it, and it's going to start chewing up your bearing or bushings. So I used the end of this wrench. It just fits right in there just right, and it's not going to scratch anything. And then we're going to remove these bushings. Now, if you were replacing these, you wouldn't need to even worry about taking these out, but these are still in great shape. There's no play in them, no wear, so I'm going to reuse them. Just take my robo grips here and gently pull them loose. It's about the only useful thing I've ever found for these pliers. They don't work good for much, but they work great for this. That was those two bushings with the short rod, those two bushings with the long one. And that is it. We are done with this arm. Alright, so let's go ahead and get everything. Now, before you put the bushings in, you want to check to make sure that your grease fittings will go in. Sometimes you can get a little powder coat in the holes where the grease fittings go in, and they may not want to go. If you have access, you can get a 1/4-20 tap, and you can gently run it down in there and clean out that powder coating to free up the threads. If you do that, make sure you clean these holes out so you don't get metal shavings inside of your pivot tubes. stick them in the arm. They're probably a little tight, and you can use like a rubber mallet and make it go in easier. Make sure that your sleeves are not inside these things while you assemble them, because you can pretty easily end up gouging your bushings trying to put them all in. If what I'm saying is, you don't want that pin inside one bushing while you try to beat the other bushing in. You could gouge it pretty easy like that. Basically, just make sure you got 3 individual pieces here. And I'll just tap these in. Again, just gently tap this into place. Obviously, you'll want to re-grease this when you get it back on the razor. It shows you what good shape these bushings are still in. If this had been an 800 with over 500 miles on it, that bushing would have, or that sleeve would have dropped in and fell out the other side. And things wear out bushings like crazy. This one's still just as tight as the day I got it. Alright, so we'll get the grease fittings installed. It's kind of a tricky thing here. You want it tight without stripping it out, but you also want it to face the right direction. See, it's getting really tight right there, and it's facing completely the wrong direction. So what you can sometimes do is figure out right where the thread's caught. Just kind of pull up on it as you unscrew it. Alright, it was this way. So what we're going to do is turn it a little bit past that and then start screwing it back down again. And sometimes you can catch different. Alright, I might have to use my open end because that's too close to the weld to get on. Anyway, you can catch the threads at a different spot. Yeah, see, now I'm getting tight and I'm facing the right direction. You just want to make sure that it's snug, but also in a direction where you can get your grease gun on it without any trouble. Do the same thing to this back one here. Getting tight just in the right spot. Should be able to come straight at it like that. If it's not tight, then when your grease gets under pressure, it'll just ooze out from under here instead of going into the bushing where it's supposed to be. Alright, so this arm is ready to go back in, or be installed in the machine. Alright, we're basically just going to reverse the process here. Just stick it up here and make sure it goes in place, which it does. Just I'm going to go ahead and put the back bolt in. Remember, your washer and your nut go on the same side because that's the way it comes from the factory. You can just kind of look back here and wiggle the arm around till you get the hole lined up. The bolt goes right in. We'll put on the washer and the nut. Get them started good. These are nylon locking nuts, so you can't finger tighten them, but so far. This is that funny bolt without the flanged head, so there's a washer on that end. Just look around the corner and try to get the hole roughly lined up. Slide the bolt in from the back. Wiggle the arm around until it goes through. Alright, and you put your second washer on this side and put the nut on. Start it with your fingers good. Okay. And we can go ahead and attach the shock, and that will hold it up in place for us. Just pop my little rope there loose, let it sit back in its slot. Just line everything up, put it through. Alright. Now, before you tighten anything up, you do want to finish assembly, get everything in place, because things need to be able to move in order to get lined up properly. At this point, this is where I would go ahead and put the sway bar in, unless the axle was in the way, which if that's the case, then you'll want to go ahead and drop this and put it in place first. So let's just go ahead and do that. Take that rope loose, set it down. If you got grease on your hands, try not to touch your brake rotor like I just did. I'm going to put this bolt through the front. Just move it around, get it lined up. Washer and nut on the back side. And the reason this bolt is this direction is a lot of debris tends to come at it from this direction, and it could wear your threads down to where you can't really get your nuts off. That sounded dirtier than I intended it, but anyway. Everything is now assembled, so again, if you couldn't get this attached, now's the time to do that. Just the bolt has to go in from this direction when it's in place, because the axle will block it from this side. What you actually have to do is kind of just get it sticking out a little bit, and then put your washer, if it has one, and put your nut on it and get it started, and then as you tighten it up, it'll actually feed in from the right side. Well, get that attached, and now what we want to do is take the air ratchet and go ahead and snug everything up. Or if you don't have an air ratchet, just use about 1,000 clicks of your regular ratchet. Thanks, air compressor. If you were using a regular ratchet, you wouldn't have to worry about that. Also, if you were not recording a video, you wouldn't have to worry about that. Okay, so the ropes are out of the way, everything's assembled, everything is snugged up. Air compressor has finished compressing, so let's continue. Just double check that your grease fittings are at the tight and at the right angles to be able to attach your grease gun to. I know a lot of people don't believe in greasing these things, but you know what, I do. So alright, so we're going to torque everything down. Go ahead and do all the 15mm. They're all the same, which is 42 pounds. I've already got, okay, I've already got the wrench set, 42. That will be the shock bolt and both of these pivot bolts on the frame side of the arm. Because of the nature of what you're tightening up here, the clicks don't always mean that you're there, so just kind of push it a few times until you get to where you have no movement at when it clicks. Alright, that one's pretty solid. Alright, now you would also torque your sway bar link. Now it would be the same, the 42 pounds, just like the rest. Alright, now tricky one is this one. If you have the smaller M10 bolt that the 15mm socket fits, then that's 42 pounds, and that's what we have here. This should be 42. Now this one is not. What they tell you to do on it is tighten it to 40 pounds plus a 180-degree turn. I know a lot of you are probably like, torque wrench, what the hell? Everybody just uses our little electric impacts to do all this. Well, I just like doing it properly, so. Alright, so now we got 40. Now what it tells us to do is another 180 degree turn. So I'm going to put it on my pull handle here. And 180 would be a little difficult, so I'm just going to do 290s. Alright, so we're straight up and down here, so we'll go 190 degree turn. And then the second one, we're a little past the straight up and down point here, so we'll go past the horizontal, about the same amount. Oh. Alright, that joker's tight. Well, that's what it calls for. Alright, so the only thing that'd be left to do would be attach this brake line. They didn't put any holes or anything to mount a clip to. It's probably just fine loose. I mean, I don't see it going anywhere. This is where it wants to sit. It's clamped here, it's attached here, it's not extremely flexible. So you can zip tie it, but the problem is the first time you hit something in that spot out on the trail, that zip tie is gone. So what I'm probably going to end up doing is just going to a hardware store and getting me a couple more of these and run a self-tapping screw like right down in here and just attach it right there to the arm. Alright, so all we have to do now is put the wheel on and set her back on the ground. Alright, let's take a look at the front arms. As you can see, they're a pretty substantial upgrade from the factory arms. If you didn't see the other installation video where I put these on, they're much heavier material, much greater clearance, a big improvement for the trail. And we can go around and look at the back now that both are on, and as you can see, we have the same thing, quite a bit of clearance over the factory arms. Alright, so with everything in place and torqued and greased, I got the machine back on the ground to give you a good view of what it looks like at rest. As you can probably tell, these arms are a pretty substantial upgrade from the factory ones, especially in terms of clearance. They also look much better. The factory arms, to me, to be honest, just always kind of look like a bunch of scrap they welded together to make some arms out of. They didn't really have any real shape to them, but these look like proper suspension components. I want to thank ORB Fabrication for supplying these to me to make the video with. You can find them online at offroadbeast.com. Now it's time to go test these things out. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.